I can make it on time. I'm looking for my audio levels. Let's see if I got it. Ooh, I can't believe it. It's like 17, 16. The countdown in seconds. It's down to 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the game playing Kyle from another world thing. Hey, somebody already in here, man. I wonder who is that? Traintastic. What's going on, bro? How you doing? I got a Discord window sitting up here just for you. Hold on a second. I gotta claim. I don't know if you're interested in the Crusades. I'm doing some audio of me showed. He's like some kind of monarchistic, crazy guy that wrote about the Crusades like they was glorious or something like that. But it's a major historical work. So I've been kind of delving into it. I can't believe, man, I got up here. I got on time. All right. Let's see. And I've got music plans as well. Yeah. So. Ooh, these Eclipse, man, I hate them. I don't even know what they... I don't know what this even is. Man, they tear me up. They disappear in their lives or something. Some kind of stealth. Stuff don't work right when you're dealing with them. But I have not read it in the instruction manual how to cope. Alright, so I can hear the sounds. Combat is getting ready to start. Right, so I got my camera layout here. This actually I got up at 3 and made my breakfast and made a pot of coffee and stuff, and cleaned up the babies, my daughters, my babies. I cleaned up her play area and got it all ready for her to come in to delve into her Roblox today. And then I came back to this Gamera layout, and if you're, it's kind of been a saga of developing this whole thing. Traintastic, what you doing up at 4:30 in the morning? Oh, I guess it's even earlier where you are. He's like at 3:30 zone. If there are too many a-holes that are up in the day and you stay up at night, then you don't have to even meet with those people at all.
Group range 19, bullseye 326, 29, 28,000. Single contact hostile.
Zero deathmatch tickets. That's crazy. Oh, I got some more seconds. Oh, I got more. All right.
range 19, bullseye 318.
Dang you.
28,000 hostile, single contact.
Oh, I think I get to spin the big wheel. Did I have 8? Or I don't even know.
That was the legal beam for Tiger 1.
Oh, wait a second. I gotta see if I can spin the wheel. No, I ain't got a 3. Need 10, buddy. 10.
29,000 hostile, single contact. Without hostile flanker. 11, 23,000 hostile
Glide.
flanker.
3 deathmatch signals. I gotta start playing Valorant. I'm scared of it. But I have to learn, I have to develop. I don't know if I can take it. I don't know. A little bit stretching. So I got the water on, I got the distilled water going. Picked up dishes from downstairs from up there to get washed. My wife still hasn't fixed the dishwashing machine up. That's the worst thing to do to me is break my dishwashing machine. Broke the water line on. I'm not gonna say that. Oh, you can see I've developed a real habit of going over here and being annoying on people. Oh, this is the one I like. Yeah, bud. Man, y'all need to kill some of them so they materialize over here. Yeah. Mr. Sneaky, you suck. I said a Mr. Sneaky. H&R, what does that stand for? Oh, I might come back here. You want to see some sneaky? Well, sneak your sneaky. Watch him cut. I'll come up here and just kill me dead. Straight up. With his little popping pop. Here comes Sneaky. Hey. Oh, you again. And I thought we were winning. I really did, man. I saw confusion in our eyes. That's better.
Box 0 group maneuver, please move direct range 12 open.
Help! 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 I ain't got enough firepower to kill them things.
185, 29 and 23,000.
Take advantage of this. Stasis beam. Put my overcharge on. It's a little bit better. No, man. I need to be committed. You know, it's like. The problem with leading with an MD in this scenario, of the way I'm playing, is I'm not going back behind to the enemy spawn point. I'm not getting a chance for assists. And assist is what I need on the dang little robot's progress path. Oh, you wasted my EMP. Sure did. Why don't you just skiddly bump over here? Oh no. Yeah, that's just what I like. Dang. Oh, little broken arrow. He can't handle this stuff. That's a speed. I cannot believe he didn't die. Alright. Let me get some assists. Somebody kill him. La 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 la. Oh, stop. Man, you got the freeze ray on me? You need to cut that out right now, boy. Oh, I hate you. Okay. H&R sneaky. Hold on a minute, bro. All right, you want me to call you? Is that what's going on? Mike Tyson. I got a direct message from Mike Tyson. Oh, I got an incoming call. I don't know what this even is. It says voice is connected. But I don't hear nothing, bro. I don't hear you talking. Train testicle. What is this even is? Okay, I got the virtual camera going. Let's see. Yeah, so I'm setting virtual camera to my roll here. I can't hear you, buddy. All right, I'm about to jump in because oh, that's cool. The way the Discord thing is coming. was envisioning a larger Discord on this layout. So the news is I'm gonna start playing Valorant. I say that because it puts pressure on me. Ante up, as it was, as it is, as it might have been. Had we stayed around long enough to find out what was going on? All right. Yeah, I'm getting ready to go back in. And maybe I could think about strategically playing in an advantagealizationalism manner for the advantageousness of the rounds of my advancements. Or maybe not. Okay, this time I'm gonna strategize this, because if my bagel oven needs assists, I should be up here popping people in the where everybody's focused in. Okay, go kill them now that I have shot some of them. So you just want to spray them a little bit. Get back. Oh. Run! Got my assist. Love it. Oh, get away. It's an arc torrent. Look out. Heal my buddies. I need heals and the assists. See, I don't go after him, right? I mean, theoretically, that's the way you should play this guy. Sorry. Oh no. Alright, now I should run back to the enemy spawn and vaporize and mechanize. Can y'all get out my way, Lord? Got my assist. Help! They're coming up here. Got another assist. Yeah, got another assist. Yeah, it's like a technique, you know, you don't go for the coup de grace, you just kind of spray them a little bit and back up and let your brothers take care of it. Finish it. Oh no. Oh. The helix rack, when you shoot it up under there, it goes up into a fusion ball. Ouch. Man, y'all suck. Get the hell, somebody get over here and help me. Help. Help. Help! Good. They're all dead. Oh no. Oh no. No, 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 no. It's a dang turret. Stupid. Stupid turret. Oh no. Oh. How come they're beating us? Get up here in time. Ooh, they all in our butt. There you go. Good. All right, I got on the gold. Oh man, my bro, his stuff ain't working. I think maybe he needs a factory reset on that computer. What's up, man? Not going for the factory reset yet. We used to call that a software enema. Look at it this way. Look at it like a learning opportunity. I always did, and that's why I ended up as head of computer repair for a university. I was running computer repair for an entire university. 20,000 computers was out there. I was the boss, fixing all the printers and computers and everything. But it all started just, fixing computers that I needed myself. Have you restarted it? I'm about to jump back in.
You want to do one? Oh, everyone's good. Let's not take too much. Say again the last numbers.
That was a spot decision. The enemy's over here, jerk. Hey, what are you doing? Oh, you sucks. Good. Boobs and bows? What is that? There was a great episode of the Three Stooges called Booby Dupes. Oh, you know, you are... yeah.
Hello?
Thank you.
Hello?
Hey, I think I hear you. Is that you?
Yes.
Oh, man.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, but your voice is kind of low. I have a lot of audio going here. Can you jack up your volume a little bit?
That better?
Yeah, well, at least I can understand. What's been going on, man? Ooh, they killing me. Oh, no. Let me just hide over here. Oh, no. Somebody got a dang surge. Who is that? Oh, dear. Okay, you guys need to die, son. Good. Let me get down here. Run! Help! Hey, what are you doing back here with full hit points? Can you tell me that? Stupid bot. Get up here. Come on. Move! Move! Put my foot in it that time. Oh, I got MVP. That's good too. You sound kind of groggy.
I know, I woke up at 3. Oh, I can hardly get any sleep.
You got sleep apnea? That will wake you up at night.
Sleep apnea.
Sleep apnea is where you you don't breathe well when you sleep, and it causes you to wake up.
I swear, I don't know what to do with the Lux texture. I swear, it's being weird.
I should have gotten a good night's sleep. I really got into bed at 7. I didn't get solid sleep till much later.
Use task Lux.
Good. Get better at getting those assists. I do not have the skill where I watch a bunch of stuff at once. I can see I'm always rushing into combat with an empty magazine. Really need to work on that.
Did you know the guy that made Vehicle Simulator on Roblox? He went to jail.
The guy that made the game?
Yep. He's stupid. He got some armed weapons to Roblox Developer Center. He wasn't invited anyway, but so that they
Send me a link. I want to read that news story.
His game is actually almost dead.
Yeah, it's a big gamble being in game development. It really is. Man, I was working for this game company. The company that did Second Life, man, and they got millions invested. Millions of dollars were invested in their VR product, Sansar, and it flopped. It's changed hands. It's about the 3rd or 4th time now. Could have been a great game.
People just try to make games and then they just give up on them.
Well, I mean, in the United States, you got a lot of people that can't do anything, and they make them into managers. that's I guess like aftershock of oligarchy. Yeah. You get an oligarchy, and you got all these rich families that have their kids can't do anything. They don't know how to have any education or anything like that. Certainly not in management or executive MBA level type stuff. And they're like, well, we're rich, so we should be in charge. And they just run stuff into the ground.
Read on Roblox, real scale. Oh, it's lagging.
God, I should be yawning. See how we know. Are you sitting in a game stream? Because all I see is myself. Hold on.
Say stuff in the game because it's unnecessary. Hold on, give me 1 sec. Alright, it's coming through right now.
Oh dear.
Free opening.
Okay, yeah. Oh yeah. Okay, it's working. Oh, cool. Let me get out my waffle iron. Come on, spawn. Man, did everybody see that? Anybody watching this stream should see that. Not my choice. Go. A minigun. Oh, I hit you. Let me go up here. I still gotta get this guy out on the... There was specialization spree. I was supposed to be running a Panther all the time. I forgot. Oh, we won! So, dude, I'm gonna play Valorant today. Which I guess means at an hour I should switch to my other Macarena account if I'm going to do 2 hours on Valorant. I need some assists over here. Hey, dude, get away from me with that taser. Taser. Don't tase me, bro. Guardians? Oh. Ow. I had a feeling that was about to happen. That's why I just unloaded. 16 seconds. What can I do in 16 seconds? Six seconds? This sucks. I could get killed in 6 seconds. Dang. Indecision. Bastions. Kill him. Ah! Daisy, help me. Help me. Please kill this guy. Please. Oh no. Please help me now. Kill him. Kill him. Kill him. Good. Those who fight and run away will live to fight another day. That rabbit's dynamite. Oh, you're really young, Traintastic. Have you ever seen any Monty Python movies? You might like them. I don't know. Oh, I got an assist. So I was looking at that guy trying to see if he was on my team, you know, and he was looking at me. I was like, we're like face to face, fully locked and loaded, you know. What are you doing? Oh, wait a second. You're one of them. Blam! Humiliation. Humiliation. Let me look at my time here. 43. That's good. I burned through my dang deathmatch saints. Good. Oh, it's the Walking Dead. We got a 4,000, 4,100 squad power. Oh no.
I'd be so surprised if this turn works. Turns like that no more. We'll see if it takes the tight corner. Oh, it does not like it, but it'll like it. Come on, train, you can do it. There we go.
Go what? Oh, right. Oh man, fantastic. I see I've launched your train. I need to check my Hellraiser and see what he said. Gotta see what Chef Laho said.
77 Luminous West, Bullseye 180, 39 and 21,000 out of normal back.
Ooh, Walking Dead.
Northwest, Bullseye 180, 38, 21,000 outbound space, normal back.
Man, I'm Walking Dead.
Green makes its way over here. We got some train cars out for it.
85, 32, 22,000, hometown flanker, normal back.
Find the right one still.
Okay.
Double two, track 350, Bullseye 185, 27, 22,000, hometown flanker, normal back.
Okay.
I say, Rocket Ranger, you don't have a space helmet on after all. Merely a piece of cutout laundry shirt cardboard with a helmet painted on it. Did I hurt you? Only when I laugh.
Looks like more rough area tunes for grass.
Double two, a BB, double started.
This is the right train car.
Lucky, man. That was really a lucky situation. Hey, hey, hey. It's Fat Albert. Kidding me? One-shotting me? My Panther is like pathetic. Alright.
Yes, this will buddy.
Alright, we won. Okay, all kidding aside, we've got to carry this Ward of Venus. Load your sparkler with flints and come out to the rocket ship where we shall prepare to blast off.
So here comes the train.
I will give it one more shot with the whatever last
And so, with the immortal words of blast off echoing hollowly in the commissioner's office, the scene fades out. And in the next scene... Oh, man, come on. The next scene that fades in is a brand new scene that takes place in Captain T-Video's rocket ship.
We gotta stop the train. There's no more track.
Help! 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 He's gonna tase me!
I don't know who keeps a couple in the train back.
Help!
Passing 7,000.
Okay, never mind. The train has derailed.
Your train derailed?
Yep. Don't know how.
Delta 128372660, corporate to stand for a steering deck and on this is 150 positive
Fix this.
I upgraded my my MD on my main account. This implant, well, is what I upgraded that makes the, I think the turnaround before he can do another heal is faster. But yeah, I was just using that in battle. It's pretty intense. It's working. I got MVP with the little bugger too. Actually, it's the same old scene, only with a frame stuck over. With a frame stuck over to look like it's a new scene in a rocket ship. Captain, I'm scared. Are you?
It was the freight train. I don't know why I made it so long. Need to drink some more coffee.
19, bullseye 324, 33, 26,000, hostile, single contact. Picture ship over bullseye 225, 49 and 21,000, outbound space.
Shoot.
Group range 20,
We'll
bullseye
see here.
31,
We'll see if we get
25,000,
here.
hostile, single contact.
Shoot. You like my new outfit?
You robot. You check. You're no longer a order of fries.
Yep. No longer fry guy. I'm train-tastic. That's what my old account used to be till it got hacked. I used to have an old account named Train-tastic 3448. Looks like this one, there's a name at the end of this one. That's just my display username.
Oh.
That was laggy. Like
So I got my 200 acorns. Yeah, I'm gonna go over to my other account now. Pushing myself to play Valorant. All right, so I'm gonna run my my music.
Oh, I had to delete my Twitch account. I got
What happened?
it was somebody was trying to get into it. I was getting emails about it. I don't know who it was, but I was getting emails from a different town, state. So
You gotta work on your security skills. My Twitch account has got one of those really there's one Google Mail that has the password in it, saved in it, and there's another Google Mail which is the actual Google Mail that receives the authentication code. So it's a very complicated password that I log in with one Google account, and then I have to send an authentication code from another email account. You don't want people getting in your Twitch, man.
Oh, I forgot I looked up FedEx logo. Need my friend making that FedEx place in Grove Scale.
I made you some logos one day, but then I didn't hear from you for a long time. Now I don't even know where they are.
Well, it's because my internet was out for like, what, 4 days?
What was wrong with it?
It's just the internet's been cutting out lately. It's not my computer, it's the internet itself. Let's see what I win today. This one.
Is now providing constant control service
Hey, that's
Archer Arrow 1 Channel 30490. Everyone on board must be identified for the
oh boy. Let's see.
Everyone has 3,000 under on board of 159.
Glade?
Damn, these guys are really deep. I'm not getting rid of that. That's so
to his soldiers, and repeated to them that all was ready to receive them. His discourse, and still more, his example, at length reunited their courage, and 60 of them commenced the escalade. They ascended by the ladder of leather, led on by one Falcor de Chartres, whom the historian of Tancred compares to an eagle conducting her young ones, and flying at their head. 116. Among these 60 brave men was the Count of Flanders, together with several of the principal chiefs. Very soon 16 more crusaders quickly pressed upon the heels of the first, 117, and these again were followed by such numbers and with such precipitation that the parapet to which the ladder was fixed tottered, and at length fell with a loud crash into the ditch. Such as were nearly attaining the summit of the tower fell upon the lances and swords of the companions who were following them. Disorder and confusion prevailed among the assailants. Nevertheless, the leaders of the plot viewed everything with a tranquil eye. Pyrrhus embraced his new companions over the bloody corpse of his brother. He even yielded to their swords another brother who happened to be with him, and then surrendered to the Crusaders the 3 towers entrusted to his command. 7 other towers soon fell into their hands, and Pyrrhus nobly summoned the whole Christian army to his aid. He fixed a new ladder to the rampart, by which the most impatient ascended, and he pointed out to others a gate which they might easily burst open, and might crowds rushed into the city. Godfrey, Raymond, and the Duke of Normandy were soon in the streets of Antioch at the head of their battalions. All the trumpets were sounded, and from the 4 hills the city resounded with a terrible cry that is the will of God. It is the will of God. At the first report of the tumult, the Christians dwelling in Antioch all believed that their last hour was come, and that the Mussulmans were about to sacrifice them. The latter, half asleep, poured out of their houses to ascertain the cause of the noise they heard, and died without knowing who were the traitors, or by whose hands they were slain. Some, when aware of the danger, fled towards the mountain upon which the citadel was built, whilst others rushed out at the gates of the city. All who could not fly fell beneath the swords of the conquerors. In the midst of this bloody victory, Bohemond did not neglect taking formal possession of Antioch, and at dawn his red standard was seen, floating over one of the highest towers of the city. At the sight of this, the Crusaders who were left in charge of the camp broke into loud acclamations of joy and hastened to take a part in this fresh conquest of the Christians. The slaughter of the Mussulmans was continued with unabated fury. The greater part of the Christians of Antioch, who, during the siege, had suffered much from the tyranny of the infidels, joined their liberators, several exhibiting the fetters by which they had been loaded by the Turks, and thus further provoking the vindictive spirit of the victorious army.
Oh, I get to spin the big
The
wheel.
public places were covered with dead bodies, and blood flowed in torrents in the streets. The soldiers penetrated into the houses.
Who would want
Religious
that?
emblems pointed out, such as were Christians,
I don't even
Samaritans,
run a
and
slave
their
shop.
brethren. But everything that was not marked where the cross became the object of vengeance, and all who pronounced not the name of Christ were massacred without mercy. In a single night, more than 6,000 of the inhabitants of Antioch perished. Many of those who had fled into the neighboring fields were pursued and brought back into the city, where they found either slavery or death. In the first moments of the confusion, Axum, seeing that he was betrayed, and no longer daring to trust any of his officers, resolved to fly towards Mesopotamia and go to meet the army of Carbaga. Escaping through one of the gates, he proceeded without an escort over mountains and through forests, till he fell in with some Armenian woodcutters. These men at once recognized the Prince of Antioch, and as he bore upon his countenance marks of depression and grief, they judged that the city must be taken. One of them, drawing near to him, snatched his sword from him and plunged it into his body. His head was carried to the new masters of Antioch, and Pyrrhus had an opportunity of contemplating without fear the features of him who, the day before, might have sentenced him to death. After having received great riches as a reward of his treachery, the renegade embraced the Christianity he had abandoned and followed the Crusaders to Jerusalem. 2 years afterwards, his ambition not being satisfied, he returned to the religion of Mohammed and died abhorred by both Muslims and Christians, whose cause he had by turns embraced and betrayed. When the Christians were tired of slaughter, they prepared to attack the citadel. But as it was built upon a mountain, inaccessible on most sides, all their efforts were useless. They contented themselves with surrounding it with soldiers and machines of war in order to confine the garrison, and then spread themselves throughout the city, giving way to all the intoxication which their victory inspired. The pillage of Antioch had yielded them immense riches, and although they had found but a small stock of provisions, they abandoned themselves to the most extravagant excesses of intemperance and debauchery. These events passed in the early days of June, 1098. The siege of Antioch had been begun in the month of October of the preceding year. After this victory, 3 days passed quickly away in the midst of rejoicings, but the fourth was a day of fear and mourning. A formidable army of Saracens was drawing near to Antioch. From the earliest period of the siege, Axum and the Sultan of Nice, whom the Christians had despoiled of his dominions, had applied to all the Muslim powers to procure assistance against the warriors of the West. The supreme head of the Seljukids, the Sultan of Persia, had promised to aid them. And at his voice all caressing, says Matthew, of Edessa, Media, Babylon, a part of Asia Minor, and all the east, from the Damascus and the sea coast to Jerusalem and Arabia, had arisen at once to attack the Christians. 118, Kuroga, Sultan of Mosul, commanded this army of the Muslims. This warrior had fought for the length of time, at one period for the Sultan of Persia Bargera,
Awful.
and others for the various princes of the family of
44,000
Malik
damage.
Shah, who contended for the empire. Often defeated, and twice a prisoner, he had grown old amidst the tumults of civil war. As full of contempt for the Christians as of confidence in himself, a true model of the fierce, Sulcushian celebrated by Tasso, he considered himself the liberator of Asia, and traversed Mesopotamia with all the pomp and
Lagging.
splendor of a conqueror. The Sultans of Nice, Aleppo, and Damascus, with the governor of Jerusalem and 28 emirs from Persia, Palestine, and Syria, marched under his command. The Muslim soldiers were animated by a thirst for vengeance, and swore by their prophet to exterminate all the Christians. On the third day after the taking of Antioch, the army of Kubaga pitched its tents on the banks of the Orontes. The Christians were made aware of its arrival by a detachment of 300 horsemen, who came to reconnoiter the place, and advanced, even under the walls. Inquietude and alarm succeeded immediately to festivity and rejoicing. They found that they had not stores to sustain a siege, and several of the leaders were sent with their troops towards the court of St. Simeon and into the neighboring country to collect all the provisions they could find. But the territory of Antioch had been so completely ravaged during many months that they could not procure anything like enough for the maintenance of a numerous army. The return of all who had been sent in quest of provisions completed the terror of the Christians. At the very moment of their arrival, the infidels attacked the advanced posts of the Crusaders. And, even in these early contests, the Christian army had to lament the loss of several of its bravest warriors. Solomon was wounded in a sortie. In vain Tancred and Godfrey performed prodigies of glory. The Muslims forced the Christians to shut themselves up, in a place of which the latter had but just made themselves masters, and in which they were soon closely besieged in their
You
turn.
mad?
Placed
Sorry,
between the garrison
bro.
of the citadel and the
Thought you were
besieging
trying to
army,
kill me.
the Crusaders found themselves in a most critical position.
Not again.
To prevent their being relieved by any supplies by sea, 2,000 Muslims were sent by Kubaga to take possession of the port of St. Simeon and of all vessels which brought provisions to the Christian army. Famine was not long in making its appearance, and soon exercised cruel ravages among the besieged. From the earliest period of the siege, the Crusaders could scarcely procure the common necessaries of life at their weight in gold. A loaf of moderate size sold at a pheasant, an egg was worth 6 Lucas
Oh, no.
dinars, whilst a pound of silver was given for the head of an ox, a horse, or an ass. Godfrey bought for 15 silver marks a half-starved camel, and gave 3 marks for a goat, which, at other times would have been rejected by the poorest soldiers of his army. Surrounded by the vast riches conquered from the Saracens, the Crusaders were thus condemned to all the horrors and miseries of famine. After having killed most of their horses, they were compelled to make war upon unclean animals. The soldiers and the poor who followed the army supported themselves on roots and leaves. Some went so far as to devour the leather of their bucklers and shoes, whilst the most wretched exhumed the bodies of the Saracens, and, to support their miserable existence, disputed with death for his prey. In this frightful distress, disconsolate mothers could no longer nourish their babes, and died with famine and despair. Princes and knights, whose pride and haughtiness had been the most conspicuous, were brought to the necessity of asking alms. The Count of Flanders went begging to the houses and in the streets of Antioch for the commonest and coarsest boards, and often obtained none. More than one leader sold his arms and all his appointments for food to support him a single day. As long as the Duke of Lorraine had any provisions, he shared them with his companions. But at length he made the sacrifice of his last war horse, and found himself, as were all the other crusaders, reduced to the most cruel necessities. Many of the crusaders endeavored to fly from a city which presented to them nothing but the image and the prospect of death. Some fled by sea through 1,000 dangers, whilst others cast themselves amongst the Mussulmans, where they purchased a little bread by the abandonment of Christ and his religion. The soldiers necessarily lost courage when they saw the Count de Melun, who so often defied of in the field, a second time fly from famine and misery. His desertion was preceded by that of the Count de Blois, who bore the standard of the Crusaders, and presided at their councils. He had quitted the army 2 days before the taking of Antioch, and when he learned the arrival of Kubaga, he, with his troops, immediately marched towards Constantinople. Deserters made their escape during the darkness of night. Sometimes they precipitated themselves into the ditches of the city at the risk of their lives. Sometimes they descended from the ramparts by means of a cord. Every day the Christians found themselves abandoned by an increasing number of their companions. And these desertions added to their despair. Heaven was invoked against the dastards. God was implored that they might, in another life, share the fate of the traitor Judas. The ignominious epithet of rope dancers Sotersta, cord, was attached to their names and devoted them to the contempt of their companions. William of Tyre refuses to name the crowd of knights, who then deserted the cause of Jesus Christ, because he considers them as blotted out from the book of life forever. 119. The wishes of the Christians against those who fled were but too completely fulfilled. The greater part perished from want, and others were killed by the Saracens. Stephen, Count of Chartres, more fortunate than his companions, succeeded in reaching the camp of Alexius, who was advancing with an army towards Antioch. To excuse his desertion, he did not fail to paint, in the darkest colors, all the misfortunes and dangers of the Christians, and to make it appear by his account that God had abandoned the cause of the Crusaders. The despair of several Latin pilgrims who followed the army of the Greeks was so violent that it urged them to horrible blasphemies.
I need to go help my
120.
teammates or else they
They,
will die.
groaning, asked why the true God had permitted the destruction of his people. Why he had allowed them, who were going to deliver the tomb of his son, to fall into the hands of his enemies. Nothing was heard among the Latin crusaders but such strange speeches, and Guy, the brother of Bohemond, exceeded all the rest in his despair. In the excess of his grief, he blasphemed more than any, and could not understand the mysteries of providence, which betrayed the cause of the Christians. O God, cried he, what has become of thy power? If thou art still an all-powerful God, what has become of thy justice? Are we not thy children? Are we not thy soldiers? Who is the father of a family? Who is the king who thus suffers his own to perish when he has the power to save them? If you abandon those who fight for you, who will dare, henceforward, to range themselves under your sacred banner? In their blind grief, all the crusaders repeated these impious words.
I don't know if
Such
anybody
was
is
the
coming
frenzy of
behind me.
despair in the
That's what I'm
sorrow that
afraid of.
plunged them, that, according to the report
I think I lost your
contemporary
stream. I'm just
all
seeing like a
ceremonies of religion were
gray
suspended, and no priest or layman during many
something,
days
like a
pronounced the
gray
name
screen,
of
a blank
Jesus
screen.
Christ. The Emperor Alexius, who had advanced as far as Philomelium, was so terrified by all he heard that he did not dare to continue his march towards Antioch. He thought, says Anna Komnena, it was rash to attempt to succor
Give
a
me a
city
minute.
whose fortifications had been ruined by a long siege, and whose only defenders were soldiers reduced to the lowest state of misery. Alexius further reflected, says the same historian, upon the indiscretion and the inconstancy of the Franks, upon their manner of making war without art or rules, and upon the imprudence with which, after having conquered their enemies, they allowed themselves to be surprised by the very same people whom they had conquered.
Ah,
He
no, I
likewise
died.
thought of the difficulty he should have in making his arrival known
That was
to the Crusaders, and of the still greater difficulty of making their leaders agree with him upon the best means to save them. All these motives appeared reasonable. But it is easy to believe that Alexius was not sorry to see a war going on which destroyed at the same time both Turks and Latins. However it may be, the resolution which he took of returning to
Surprised me he's
Constantinople threw all the
captured.
Christians of Phrygia and Bithynia into the greatest alarm. The report then current was, and if we may believe Anna Komnena, it was from the insinuations of Alexius that the Mussulmans were approaching with numerous armies.
The enemy tank.
They were constantly believed to be coming, and the soldiers of the emperor themselves laid waste all the country round Philomelium, which, they said, the Saracens were about to invade. Women, children, all the Christian families followed the army of Alexius as it returned to Constantinople. They bade an eternal adieu to their native country, and deplored the loss of their property of all kinds. Nothing was heard in the army but lamentations
I
and
can't
groans.
figure out how to get this.
But they who evinced the greatest grief were the Latins, whose wishes were all centered in Syria, and who lost all hope of assisting their brethren besieged in the city of Antioch. When the news of this retreat reached Antioch, it greatly augmented the depression of the Crusaders. Not a hope remained to them. Famine carried off every day a great number of soldiers. Their weakened arms could scarcely lift the lance or the sword. They had neither strength to defend their own lives nor to bury their dead. In the midst of such frightful misery, not a tear was seen, not a sob was heard. The silence was as complete at Antioch as if the city had been buried in a most profound night, as if not one living person was left in it. The Crusaders had not even the courage of despair left. The last feeling of nature, the love of life, was becoming daily extinct in their hearts. They feared to meet each other in the public places, and concealed themselves in the interior of the houses, which they looked upon as their tombs. The towers and the ramparts remained almost without defense. Bohemond, who had taken the command of the place, sought in vain by his speeches to raise the courage of the Crusaders. In vain the trumpets and the sergeants-at-arms called them to the combat. Whilst the Mussulmans shut up in the citadel, and those who besieged the city every day renewed their attacks, the Christian warriors remained immovable in their dwellings. In order to drive them from their retreats, Bohemond was obliged to give several quarters of the city up to the flames. Raoul Decan deplores, in pompous verses, the conflagration and the ruin of churches and palaces built with the cedars of Mar-Lebanon and in which shone the marble of Mount Atlas, the crystal of Tyre, the brass of Cyprus, the lead of Amathontus, and the iron of England. The barons, who could no longer enforce the obedience of their soldiers, had not strength to offer them an example. Then they bitterly remembered their families, their capital, their wealth, all which they had put it for this unfortunate war. They could not comprehend the reverses of the Christian army, and little was wanting, says William of Tyre, to make them accuse God of ingratitude for having refused so many sacrifices made to the glory of his name. Matthew of Edessa relates that the Christian leaders offered to give up the city to Kerbaga upon the single condition that he would allow them and their soldiers to return to their own countries, taking with them their baggage. As the Saracen general rejected their proposal, several of them, actuated by despair, formed the project of abandoning the army and flying by night towards the coast, but were prevented by the exhortations of Godfrey and Bishop Ademar, who pointed out to them the disgrace which such a step would bring upon them in the eyes of both Europe and Asia. The famine had continued its ravages for more than 2 weeks, and the Mussulmans pressed on the siege with the greater ardor, from the conviction that they should soon be masters of the city. Fanaticism and superstition, which had precipitated the Crusaders into the abyss in which they were now plunged, alone had the power to reanimate their courage and extricate them from such fearful perils. Prophecies, revelations, and miracles became every day the more frequent subjects of reporting the Christian army. St. Atlas had appeared to a venerable priest and had told him that the Christians, after overcoming all their enemies, would enter Jerusalem as conquerors, and that God would
I wish I
reward
could
their
see what was going
exploits
on
and
your
their
screen.
labors.
It's just grayed out. I
Number
don't know what
21,
happened.
a Lombard ecclesiastic had passed the night in one of the churches of Antioch and had there seen Jesus Christ, accompanied by the Virgin and the Prince of the Apostles. The Son of God, irritated by the conduct of the Crusaders, rejected their prayers and abandoned them to the fate they had too richly merited. But the Virgin fell at the knees of her Son, and by her tears and lamentations appeased the anger of the Savior. Arise, then said the Son of God to the priest, go and inform my people of the return of my commiseration. Hasten and announce to the Christians that if they come back to me, the hour of their deliverance is at hand. They whom God had thus made the depositaries of his secrets and his will, offered, in attestation of the truth of their visions, to precipitate themselves from a lofty tower, to pass through flames, or to submit their heads to the executioner. But these proofs were not necessary to persuade the Crusaders, always ready to believe in prodigies, and who had become more credulous than ever in the moment of danger and in the excess of their misfortunes. The imagination
Oh yeah, you just
I'm gonna go to an intermission. You want to hang on the line?
Huh?
I gotta go to an intermission. You want to hang on the line?
Yeah, I'll be here.
Okay, I'll be back in a minute. I'm gonna go fill up my coffee cup and put a little bit in my stomach. Let's see. Where is my dang new intermission? Okay, there it goes. It's my ads. My commercial. Commercial break, ladies and gentlemen.
No, buying it. I swear my graphics are terrible. Help slow it down.
back again. What's up? I'm gonna bring up your Discord here and look at it, see if it's something on my end, because I still can't see nothing. Okay, yeah, I got you now.
Oh boy, it's laggy. I don't know how to fix it. There's currently nothing I can do. I can try this though.
Whoa. Are you still there? Guess not.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
I can't seem to figure out how to get my graphics down. I tried everything. It just keeps lagging. Thing is on low, and I don't know what to do.
Frequency 397 275. That's fine by me. You want to do one? I can't even hit the pickup button. Oh, arrow 2. Let's look at you loud and clear.
How do you fix this? Seems to be no, it's not fixed.
Optional coordinates for a GBU 38. Elevation 06. The target coordinates 31 uniform. Foxtrot uniform. 26857. Say again the last numbers. Repeat all after that.
Speed this puppy up.
Imagination of both leaders and soldiers was easily led away by the promises which were made to them in the name of heaven. The hopes of a more prosperous future began to reanimate their courage. Tancred, as a good and loyal knight, swore that as long as he had 60 companions left, he would never abandon the project of delivering Jerusalem. Godfrey, Hugh, Raymond, and the two Roberts took the same oath. The whole army, after the example of the leaders, promised to fight and to suffer until the day appointed for the deliverance of the holy places. In the midst of this reviving enthusiasm, two deserters came before the Christian army and related that when endeavoring
Ouch.
to escape from
Bone
Antioch,
rain.
they had been stopped, the one by his brother, who had been killed in fight, the other by Jesus Christ himself, the Savior of mankind had promised to deliver Antioch. The warrior who had fallen under the sword of the Saracens had sworn to issue from the grave, with all his companions, equally dead as himself, to fight with the Christians. In order to crown all these heavenly promises, a priest of the Diocese of Marseille, named Peter Bartholomew, came before the Council of the Leaders to review an apparition of Saint Andrew, which had been repeated 3 times during his sleep. The Holy Apostle had said to him, "Go to the church of my brother Peter at Antioch. Near the principal altar you will find, by digging up the earth, the iron head of the lance which pierced the side of our Redeemer. Within 3 days this instrument of eternal salvation shall be manifested to its disciples. This mystical iron, borne at the head of the army, shall effect the deliverance of the Christians, and shall pierce the hearts of the infidels." 122. Adama, Raymond, and the other leaders believed or feigned to believe in this apparition, on account of which sin spread throughout the army. The soldiers said among themselves that nothing was impossible to the God of the Christians. They further believed that Jesus Christ was interested in their welfare, and that God ought to perform miracles to save its disciples and defenders. During 3 days the Christian army prepared itself by fasting and prayer for the discovery of the Holy Lands. On the morning of the 3rd day, 12 crusaders chosen from amongst the most respected of the clergy and the knights repaired to the church of Antioch with a great number of workmen provided with the necessary instruments. They began by digging up the earth under the principal altar. The greatest silence prevailed in the church. The spectators expecting every instant to see the glitter of the miraculous lens. The whole army assembled round the doors, which they had
believe
had
it,
the precaution to shut, awaited with impatience the results of the search. The diggers worked during several hours, and had gone to the depth of 12 feet without any appearance of the land. They continued their operations till evening without discovering anything. The impatience of the Christians still increased. In the middle of the night another attempt was made. Whilst the 12 witnesses were at prayers round the sides of the hole, Bartholomew precipitated himself into it, and in a short time reappeared, holding the sacred iron in his hands. A cry of joy arose among the spectators, which was repeated by the soldiers who waited at the doors, and which soon resounded through all quarters of the city. The iron on which all the hopes of the Christians were centered was exhibited in triumph to the Crusaders, to whom it appeared a celestial weapon with which God himself would disperse his enemies. Every mind became excited, and doubts were no longer entertained of the protection of heaven. Enthusiasm gave new life to the army, and restored strength and vigor to the Crusaders. All the horrors of famine, and even the numbers of their enemies, were forgotten. The most pusillanimous thirsted for the blood of the Saracens, and all demanded with loud cries to be led forth to battle. The leaders of the Christian army who had prepared the enthusiasm of the soldiers, now employed themselves in taking advantage of it. They sent deputies to the general of the Saracens to offer him either a single combat or a general battle. Peter the Hermit, who had evinced more exultation than any other person, was chosen for this embassy. Although received with contempt in the camp of the infidels, he delivered himself no less haughtily or boldly. The princes assembled in Antioch, said Peter, addressing the Saracen leaders, have sent me to demand justice of you. These provinces, stained with the blood of martyrs, have belonged to Christian nations, and as all Christian people are brothers, we are coming to Asia to prevent the injuries of those who have been persecuted, and to defend the heritage of Christ and his disciples. Heaven has allowed the cities of Syria to fall for a time into the power of infidels, in order to chastise the offenses of his people. But learn that the vengeance of the Most High is appeased. Learn that the tears and penitence of the Christians have turned aside the sword of divine justice, and that the God of armies has arisen to fight on our side. Nevertheless we still consent to speak of peace. I conjure you, in the name of the all-powerful God, to abandon the territory of Antioch and return to your own country. The Christians promise you, by my voice, not to molest you in your retreat. We will even put up prayers for you that the true God may touch your hearts and permit you to see the truth of our faith. If heaven deigns to listen to us, how delightful it will be to us to give you the name of brethren, and to conclude with you a lasting peace. But if you are not willing to accept either the blessings of peace or the benefits of the Christian religion, let the fate of battle at length decide the justice of our cause. As the Christians will not be taken by surprise, and as they are not accustomed to steal victories, they offer you the choice of combat. 123. When finishing his discourse, Peter fixed his eyes upon the leader of the Saracens, and said, Choose from amongst the bravest of thy army, and let them do battle with an equal number of the Crusaders. Fight thyself with one of our Christian princes, or give the signal for a general battle. 124. Whatever may be thy choice, thou shalt soon learn what thy enemies are, and thou shalt know what the great God is whom we serve. Kubota, who knew the situation of the Christians, and who was not aware of the kind of support they had received in their distress, was much surprised at such language. He remained for some time mute, with astonishment and rage, but at length said, Return to them who sent you, and tell them it is the part of the conqueror to receive conditions, and not to dictate them. Miserable vagabonds, extenuated men, phantoms may terrify women. But the warriors of Asia are not intimidated by vain words. The Christians shall soon learn that the land we tread upon belongs to us. Nevertheless, I am willing to entertain some pity for them, and if they will acknowledge Mohammed, I may forget that this city, a prey to famine, is already in my power. I may leave it in their hands and give them arms, clothes, bread, women, in short, all that they have not. For the Quran bids us pardon all who submit to its laws. Bid my companions hasten, and on this very day, take advantage of my clemency. Tomorrow they shall only leave Antioch by the sword. They will then see if their crucified God, who could not save himself on the cross, can save them from the fate which is prepared for them. This speech was loudly applauded by the Saracens, whose fanaticism rekindled. Peter wished to reply, but the Sultan of Mosul, placing his hand upon his sword, commanded that these miserable mendicants, who united blindness with insolence, should be driven away. The Christian deputies retired in haste, and were in danger of losing their lives several times whilst passing through the army of the infidels. Peter rendered an account of his mission to the assembled princes and barons, and all immediately prepared for battle. The heralds at arms proceeded through the different quarters of the city, and battle was promised for the next day to the impatient valor of the Crusaders. The priests and bishops exhorted the Christians to render themselves worthy of fighting for the cause of Jesus Christ. And the whole army passed the night in prayer and acts of devotion. Injuries were forgiven, alms were bestowed, and all the churches were filled with warriors who humbled themselves before God and implored a remission of their sins. The preceding evening some provisions had been found, and this unexpected abundance was considered as a species of miracle. The Crusaders repaired their strength by a frugal meal, and towards the end of the night, that which remained of bread and meal in Antioch served for the sacrifice of the Mass. 100,000 warriors approached the tribal North Grenadines and received, with all the evidences of piety, the God for whom they had taken up arms. 125. At length day appeared. It was the festival of St. Peter and St. Paul. The gates of Antioch were thrown open, and the whole Christian army marched out in 12 divisions, symbolical of the 12 apostles. Hugh the Great, though weakened by a long illness, appeared in the foremost ranks, and bore the standard of the church. All the princes, knights, and barons were at the head of their men-at-arms. The only one of all the leaders that did not appear in the ranks was the Count de Toulouse. Detained in Antioch by the consequences of a wound, he was charged with the duty of watching the garrison of the citadel, whilst his companions went to give battle to the army of the Saracens. Raymond Giles, 126, one of the historians of the crusade, bore the Holy Lance and directed the attention of the soldiers to it. Ademar marched by the side of Raymond, announcing to the crusaders the help of the celestial legions which God had promised them. A part of the clergy advanced in procession at the head of the army, singing the martial song, "Let the Lord arise, and let his enemies be dispersed." The bishops and priests who had remained in Antioch, surrounded by the women and children, from the top of the ramparts blessed the arms of the crusaders, praying the Lord to preserve his people and confound the pride of his enemies. The banks of the Orontes and the neighboring mountains appeared to answer to these invocations, and resounded with the war cry of the crusaders, "It is the will of God. It is the will of God." Amidst this concert of acclamations and prayers, the Christian army advanced into the plain. To judge only by the state of misery to which they had been reduced, they had rather the appearance of a conquered army than of an army of men marching to victory. A great number of the crusaders were without clothes. The greater part of the knights and barons marched on foot. Some were mounted on asses and camels, and, what is not an indifferent circumstance on this day, Godfrida Bouillon had been obliged to borrow a horse of the Count of Toulouse. In the ranks were sick and attenuated soldiers, weakened by famine, and marching with difficulty, who were only supported by hope of conquering or dying for the cause of Jesus Christ. The whole country round Antioch was covered with the Mussulman battalions. The Saracens had divided their army into 15 bodies, arranged in echelons. In the midst of all these, the division of Kurboga, says the Armenian historian, appeared like an inaccessible mountain. The Saracen general, who had no expectation of a battle, at first believed that the Christians were come to implore his clemency. A black flag flying over the citadel of Antioch, which was the signal agreed upon to announce the resolution of the Crusaders, soon informed him that he had not to deal with supplicants. 2,000 men of his army, who guarded the passage of the bridge of Antioch, were cut in pieces by the Count of Vermandois. The fugitives carried terror to the tent of their general, who was playing at chess. Aroused from his false security, the Sultan of Musul ordered the head of a deserter to be cut off who had announced to him the speedy surrender of the Christians, and then set himself seriously to the task of fighting an enemy whose auxiliaries were fanaticism and despair. On marching out of Antioch 127, the Christians advanced westwards, towards the spot where the mountains draw near to the Orontes. Ranged, in order of battle, in a vast space where the mountains formed a semicircle around them and secured them from surprise, they extended across the plain away from the city. Here, the two Roberts, the Count de Belizon and the Count of Hainaut placed themselves at the head of the left wing. Godfrey was on the right, supported by Eustace, Baldwin de Bourg, Tancred, Rinaldo de Toul, and Erard de Pizet. Ademar was in the center, with Gaston de Bern, the Count de Die, Raybot of Orange, William of Montpellier, and Lemandre d'Albret. Bohemond commanded a body of reserve, ready to act upon all points where the Christians might require assistance. Kurboga, who saw the disposition of the Crusaders, ordered the Sultans of Nice, Damascus, and Aleppo to make the tour of the mountain and then reascend the Orontes, so as to place themselves between the Christian army and the city. He at the same time drew his army up in line of battle to receive the Christians and repulse their attack. He placed his troops partly on the heights and partly on the plain. His right wing was commanded by the Emir of Jerusalem, and his left wing by one of his sons of Exen. For himself he remained upon the high hill, to give his orders and watch the movement of the two armies. At the moment of the commencement of the battle, Kurboga was seized with fear, and sent to propose to the Christian princes, that in order to spare the effusion of blood, they should select some of their knights to fight against an equal number of Saracens. This proposal, which had been rejected the day before, could not be adopted by the leaders of an army full of ardor and confident of victory. The Christians entertained no doubt that heaven had declared itself in their favor, and this persuasion must render them invincible. In their enthusiasm, they looked upon the most natural events as prodigies, announcing to them the triumph of their arms. a globe of fire, which, on the preceding evening had passed across the horizon and burst over the camp of the Saracens, appeared to them in time foretelling their victory. As they left Antioch, a light rain refreshed the burning air of the climate and the season, and was in
All I
their
can do is
eyes
try
a
to
fresh
stay alive.
proof
Well,
of
no.
the favor of heaven. A strong wind, which assisted the flight of their javelins and impeded that of the arrows of the Turks, was for them as the wind of heavenly anger raised to disperse the infidels. Animated by this persuasion, the Christian army showed the greatest impatience to begin the fight. They marched towards the enemy in perfect order. A profound silence reigned over the plain, on all parts of which shone the arms of the Christians. No sound was heard in the ranks but the voices of the leaders, the hymns of the priests, and the exhortations of the demon. All at once the Saracens commenced the attack by discharging a cloud of arrows and then rushing
Oh, yeah?
on the Crusaders, uttering barbarous cries. In spite of their impetuous shock, the right wing was soon repulsed and penetrated by the Christians. Godfrey met with greater resistance in their left wing.
Is there any way you
He
can do what?
succeeded, however, in breaking
Is there any
it
way I
and
can
carrying
install like
disorder
a
among their
software that
ranks.
would boost my
At the
games?
moment that the troops of Kurbaka
don't
began
know,
to give
buddy.
way, the Sultan of Nice, who had made the tour of the mountain and returned along the banks of the Orontes,
I would Google it.
impetuosity upon the rear of the Christian army and threatened destruction to the body of reserve commanded by Bohemond. The Crusaders, who fought on foot, could not resist the first charge of the Saracen cavalry. Hugh the Great, warned of the danger of Bohemond, abandoned the pursuit of the fugitives and hastened to the succor of the body of reserve. Then the battle was renewed with redoubled fury. Kilij Arslan, who had to avenge the shame of several defeats, as well as the loss of estates, fought like a lion at the head of his troops. A squadron of 3,000 Saracen horse,
Wasted a
closed
shell.
in, steel and armed
Two
with
shells.
clubs, carried disorder and terror through the ranks of the Christians. The standard of the Count of Vermandois
Space for
was
jam.
carried away and retaken,
But I got some
covered
space
with
for
the
you,
blood
jam.
of Crusaders and infidels.
Alright.
Godfrey and Tancred, who flew to the assistance of Hugh and Bohemond, signalized their strength and valor by the death of a great many Mussulmans. The Sultan of Nice, whom no reverse could overcome, firmly withstood the shock of the Christians.
So
In the heat of the combat, he ordered lighted flags to
Man,
be thrown amongst
we're
the
here,
bushes
you're the
and
witness.
dried grass which covered the plain. Immediately a blaze arose, which enveloped the Christians in masses of flame and smoke. Their ranks were for a moment broken. They could no longer either see or hear their leaders. The Sultan of Nice was about to gather the fruits of his stratagem, and victory was on the point of escaping from the hands of the Crusaders. At this moment, say the historians, a squadron was seen to descend from the summit of the mountains, preceded by 3 horsemen clothed in white and covered with shining armor. Behold, cried Bishop Ademar 128, the heavenly succor which was promised to you. Heaven declares for the Christians. The holy martyrs George, Demetrius, and Theodore come to fight for you. Immediately all eyes were turned towards the Celestial Legion. A new ardor inspired the Christians, who were persuaded that God himself was coming to their aid, and the war cry is the will of God was heard as at the beginning of the battle. The women and children who had remained in Antioch and were collected on the walls animated the courage of the Crusaders by their cries and acclamations, whilst the priests continued to raise their hands towards heaven and return thanks to God by songs of praise and thanksgiving for the succor he had sent to the Christians. Of the Crusaders themselves, each man became a hero, and nothing could stand before their impetuous charge. In a moment the ranks of the Saracens were everywhere broken, and they only fought in confusion and disorder. They endeavored to rally on the other side of a torrent and upon an elevated point whence their trumpets and clarions resounded. But the Count of Vermandois attacked them in this last post and completely routed them. They had now no safety but in flight, and the banks of the Orontes, the woods, the plains, the mountains were covered with the fugitives, who abandoned both their arms and their baggage. Kurbaka, who had been so certain of victory as to have announced the defeat of the Christians to the Caliph of Baghdad and the Sultan of Persia, fled towards the Euphrates, escorted by a small body of his most faithful soldiers. Several of the emirs had taken to flight before the end of the battle. Tancred and some others, mounted on the horses of the conquered enemy, pursued till nightfall the sultans of Aleppo and Damascus, the emir of Jerusalem, and the scattered wreck of the Saracen army. The conquerors set fire to the entrenchments behind which the enemy's infantry had sought refuge, and a vast number of Muslims perished in the flames. According to the account of several contemporary historians, the infidels left 100,000 dead on the field of battle. 4,000 crusaders lost their lives on this glorious day, and were placed among the ranks of the martyrs. The Christians found abundances beneath the tents of their enemies. 15,000 camels and a great number of horses fell into their hands. As they passed the night in the camp of the Saracens, they had leisure to admire the luxury of the Orientals, and they examined with the greatest surprise the tent of the king of Mosul, 129, resplendent with gold and precious stones, which, divided into long streets flanked by high towers, resembled a fortified city. They employed several days in carrying the spoils into Antioch. The booty was immense, and every crusader, according to the remark of Albert Dykes, found himself much richer than he was when he quitted Europe. The sight of the Saracen camp after the battle proved plainly that they had displayed much more splendor and magnificence than true courage. The veteran warriors, the companions of Malik Shah, had almost all perished in the civil wars which had for so many years desolated the empire of the Seljukites. The army that came to the succor of Antioch was composed of raw troops, levied in haste, and reckoned under its standard several rival nations, always ready to take up arms against each other. 130. It is the duty of the historian to admit that the 28 emirs who accompanied Karbaka were almost all at variance with one another, and scarcely acknowledged the authority of a chief. On the contrary, the greatest union prevailed on this day among the Christians. The different bodies of their army fought upon one single point and afforded each other mutual support, whereas Karbaka had divided his forces. In this battle, but more particularly in the circumstances which preceded it, the Sultan of Mosul showed more presumption than skill. By the slowness of his march he lost the opportunity of assisting Axen or of surprising the Crusaders. Afterwards, too certain of victory, he never dreamed of what despair and fanaticism are able to effect. These two powerful principles greatly increased the natural bravery of the Franks. The horrible distress to which they had been reduced only tended to make them invincible, and in that we shall find the miracle of the day. When the danger was past, the Holy Lance which had given so much confidence to the Crusaders during the battle, no longer excited their veneration, and lost all its marvelous influence. As it remained in the hands of the Count of Toulouse and his provincials, to whom it brought a great number of offerings, the other nations were not willing to leave them the sole advantage of a miracle which augmented their consideration and their wealth. And, as we shall soon see, it was not long before doubts were raised upon the authenticity of the lance which had effected such wonders, and the spirit of rivalry did that which reason might have done in a more enlightened age. The victory of Antioch appeared to the Saracens to be so extraordinary, an event that many of them abandoned the religion of their prophet. Those who defended the citadel were so struck with terror and surprise that they surrendered to Raymond the very day of the battle. 300 of them embraced the faith of the Holy Gospel, and many went among the cities of Syria declaring that the God of the Christians must be the true God. After this memorable day, the Turks made scarcely any effort to impede the march of the Christians. This last triumph of the Franks appeared to them like a decision of heaven that men ought not to contend against. Most of the emirs of Syria who had shared the spoils of the Sultan of Persia considered the invasion of the Christians as a passing calamity without thinking of the consequences it might leave behind, and only sought to take advantage of it to assure their own domination and independence. The dynasty of the Seljukites was every day losing its strength and its splendor. The vast empire of Toghrul, Alparslan, and
That's an unauthorized place.
I'm firing up Valorant for the first time on stream. That is, I played it a little bit, or failed at it a little bit. But I'm gonna pop an intermission because it's starting up slow. You still there?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm just being silent at the moment. Trying to figure out something. I did find this thing on Opera GX called Razer Cortex Game Booster. And says you can do some
Oh,
stuff.
yeah, fantastic. If you're using Opera GX, things that you can do is you can throttle the browser, or you can throttle on the what is it, on the left side of the browser. You pop out
Okay.
the settings panel, and then you can
I can mess with the
you can limit the amount of RAM that a browser uses, limit the amount of CPU.
Yeah, I already knew that. But I'm trying to boost my in-game performance. That's the thing.
Okay. So let me see if I can.
I found this. I'll show you what it is.
Actually,
Found this.
I'm not sending you. My virtual camera is not sending you the right.
I found this. This is
I can't see anything that you're doing, and also, hold on a second. I'm gonna switch my virtual camera to Gamera 1. So see that I'm working with. All right, so I'm sending an Opera screen, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now can you see my mouse moving around?
Yeah, now we can.
What? Can you see it?
Now I can see your screen.
In the top left, right? There's the very top left corner. There's the Opera icon, and then you drag your mouse down about a half an inch, and there's a thing that says GX Control, and you click on that.
See here.
Let's see if it's
GX
gonna pop
Control.
out.
So can I what do I do? Like,
Well, when you pop it out, you can limit. You have a bunch of settings there, right? And
Yeah,
you
I
can
see
limit what's being used by the browser, how much network upload and download is being used by the browser. All right, your RAM limiter, you can bring that down. Generally, you're going to get, if you go below 2 gigs, which is crazy, but it's true. If you go below 2 gigs, you're going to get a warning from Opera that and actually your browser may not be working quite right. If you go below 2 gigs on that. CPU limiter as well. You can set a hard limit. You see there's a switch under there that says you can say it can use this much memory and no more. Right? So mine right now, I don't need to put the limiter on it.
will it boost my game performance though? That's what I want to know, is how to make my game stop lagging so much.
Well, if you're running a browser at the same time, yeah, it will. But are you not running a browser at all?
I'm on it right now. I just closed the game just a minute ago.
But I mean, if you're in the game, one thing that you can do is close the browser completely.
Use Task Manager.
Well, or just exit it. But a lot of people don't want to do that.
do it.
I'll be back in a few. This pathetic machine
can do
gets up
here.
to speed. Let's see.
Oh, wow. Okay. My game is running a lot smoother. I think I figured out how to fix it.
Oh yeah?
I used that razor thing. It helps tremendously boost it all. It'll glorious.
What's it called again?
I'll show you. It can actually be my name. I'll show it to you actually. It's called Razor Cortex. Just search it up on I'll bring it up. It's actually, I think it works. Let me try to turn my graphics up. Just a little bit. Holy crap. My game didn't have any issues turning the graphics up. And it's working just fine. Let me try something. Let's see if I can turn the textures up just a little bit. Not bad. They look better. I may never know. Till I try. Let's try turning the graphics. Make most of the graphics on the view distance. Turn it back down again. I can. You want to see something cool?
Sure, buddy.
I can walk out in the front of the train while it's moving.
Don't want to do that.
Going dangerous. But it's at a consistent speed, so it's not going to hurt anything. I can.
That reminds
it's
me
going
of
really-
there's a movie. Train Tested, can you hear me? There's a
Yeah.
movie called Shadow of a Doubt, and it's
Match found.
it's a thriller.
I don't know nothing about movies that much.
Well, anyway, there's a scene where there's these people fighting on a train. Oh man, I do not want to go in here. I meant to go into practice, and I'm going into an actual match. I don't even know if my computer can run this stuff right now. I don't know how to play this game.
They think I'm an old
This
dog.
game is pretty neat, isn't it?
I'll show them just how many tricks I know.
So detailed.
This is funny. I don't know. I have no
See
idea
if
what's
I can
going to
run
happen.
one
And
of the games.
I'm getting like super lag on my stream. Too bad. Well, I don't know if it'll clear up. We'll see.
Let's save the game and I'm trying a different game. Oh, no, yeah, that's what I wanted. Let's see what game we got. Here it is. I can run this. Uh-oh. What happened? I can try to boost. if I can't get this to work. I need to change the resolution. I don't know why it's so low. Let's see here. Oh, that is so much better. If I can load it.
I hear something. BRB.
No. Just continue. I don't know how well this is gonna run. Try. Pretty sure my game quit streaming. How well does this go? On it worse than everything should be on low, so it's good.
Need to get my butt going. Oh, this is loading.
And Malik Shah was crumbling away on all sides amidst civil and foreign wars. This empire, created towards the middle of the 11th century, whose sudden increase had alarmed Constantinople and carried terror even among the nations of the West, was doomed to see other states elevate themselves upon its ruins. For, according to the remark of an historian, it might be said that God was pleased to show how insignificant the earth is in his eyes, by thus causing to pass from hand to hand, like a child's toy, a power so monstrous as to threaten the universe. The first care of the Crusaders after their victory was to put, if we may say so, Jesus Christ in possession of the countries they had just conquered, by re-establishing his worship in Antioch. The capital of Syria had all at once a new religion, and was inhabited by new people. A considerable part of the spoils of the Saracens was employed in repairing and ornamenting the churches which had been converted into mosques. The Greeks and the Latins mingled their vows and their hymns, and prayed together to the God of the Christians to conduct them to Jerusalem. The leaders of the army then joined in addressing a letter to the princes and nations of the West, in which they made a relation of their labors and their exploits. That they might not trouble the joy that the news of their victories must create, they took care to conceal the losses they had sustained. 131. But they must have made them apparent by calling new warriors to their aid. They solicited by prayers, and even by threats, the immediate departure of all who had assumed the cross and yet still remained in the West. The Crusaders sent at the same time an embassy to Constantinople, composed of Hugh, Count of Vermandois, and Baldwin, Count of Hainaut. The object of this embassy was to remind the Emperor Alexius of the promise he had made to accompany the Christians with an army to Jerusalem. The Count of Hainaut perished, with all his train, in Asia Minor. The Count of Vermandois, who took a different route, arrived safely at Constantinople, but could obtain nothing from Alexius. Hereupon, whether he was ashamed of having failed in his mission, or whether he feared to rejoin an army in which he could not maintain the splendor of his rank, he determined to return to Europe, where his desertion caused him to be compared to the Raven of the Ark. 132. Some days after the Battle of Antioch, the greater part of the pilgrims entreated the leaders to conduct them towards the Holy City, the principal object of their expedition. The council of the princes and barons being assembled, the opinions were at first divided. Some of the leaders thought that they ought to take advantage of the terror which the victory of Antioch had created in the Saracens. Both the East and the West, said they, have their eyes upon us. Christ calls us to the deliverance of his tomb. The Christians who still groan in the chains of the infidels implore the assistance of our arms. We have seen the Emir of Jerusalem, and the soldiers who ought to defend the approach to the Holy Sepulchre, fly before us. All the routes are open to us. Let us hasten then to comply with the impatience of the Crusaders, an impatience which was always so fatal to our enemies. Let us depart from an abode whose pleasures have several times corrupted the soldiers of Christ. Let us not wait till discord shall disturb our peace and rob us of the fruits of our labors. This advice seemed to be dictated by wisdom and prudence, but the majority of the leaders were full of blind security. They could not resolve still to dread enemies they had so often conquered, and the hopes of extending their conquest in Syria made them forget Jerusalem. Specious reasons were not wanting wherewith to combat the opinions they had heard. The Christian army was deficient in horses. It was exhausted by fatigue, by long miseries, and even by its own victories. As it was now the height of summer, though the Crusaders might have no enemies, they had to dread during a long march the want of water, and the heat of both the season and the climate. It was well known that new warriors from the west were expected in Asia, and prudence commanded them to wait for them. By the beginning of winter everything would be prepared for the conquest of Jerusalem, and the united Crusaders would then march without obstacles or dangers towards Palestine. This opinion obtained a majority of the suffrages. The Crusaders had soon cause to repent of their determination. An epidemic disease made fearful ravages in their army. Nothing was to be seen in Antioch, says an ancient chronicle, but burials and funerals, and death there reigned, neither more nor less, than in some great battle or defeat. Most of the women and the poor who followed the army were the first victims to this calamity. A great number of Crusaders, who came from Germany and other parts of Europe, met with death immediately on their arrival at Antioch. Within 1 month, more than 50,000 pilgrims perished by this epidemic. 133, the Christians had to regret among their leaders Henry Dias, Reno de Murbach, and several other knights renowned for their exploits. In the midst of the general mourning, the Bishop of Pi, who comforted the Crusaders in their misery, himself gave way under his fatigue and died, 134, like the leader of the Hebrews, without having seen the Promised Land. His remains were buried in the Church of St. Peter of Antioch, in the very spot where the miraculous lens had been discovered. All the pilgrims whose spiritual father he had been honored his funeral with their presence and their tears. The leaders, who sincerely regretted him, wrote to the Pope to inform him of the death of his apostolic legate. They at the same time solicited Urban to come and place himself at their head, to sanctify the standards of the crusade, and to promote union and peace in the army of Jesus Christ. But neither the respect they entertained for the memory of Edemir, nor the spectacle of the scourge which was devouring the Christian army, could close their hearts against ambition and discord. The Count of Toulouse, who still maintained his claims to the possession of Antioch, refused to deliver up to Bohemond the citadel of which he had become master on the day the Christians had defeated the army of Kerborga. These two haughty rivals were several times on the point of coming to blows, Raymond accusing the new prince of Antioch of having usurped that which belonged to his companions, whilst Bohemond threatened to bathe his sword, red with the blood of infidels, in blood which he said he had too long spared. One day that the princes and leaders were assembled in the Basilica of the Church of St. Peter, engaged in regulating the affairs of the crusade, their deliberations were disturbed by the most violent quarrels. Notwithstanding the sanctity of the place, Raymond, in the midst of the council, gave way to his passion and resentment. Even at the foot of the altar of Christ, Bohemond hesitated not to make false promises in order to draw the other chiefs to his party, and repeated several times an oath which he never meant to keep, that of following them to Jerusalem. Every day trouble and disorder increased in the Christian army, some only thinking of aggrandizing the states which victory had given them, whilst others wandered about Syria in search of cities over which they might unfurl their standards. Bands were seen dispersed in all parts, where there was a chance of a rich booty, fighting among themselves for their conquests when they were victorious, and a prey to all sorts of horrors and miseries when they met with unforeseen resistance. The jealousy which prevailed among the chiefs extended to the soldiers, the latter quarreling for the booty gained from the enemy, in the same manner that the princes and barons contended for the possession of cities and provinces. Those whom fortune had not favored complained of their companions, until some lucky chance allowed them in their turn to take advantage of all the rights of victory. On all sides the Crusaders accused each other reciprocally of having enriched themselves by injustice and violence, although everybody envied the most guilty. And yet, amidst their conflicts or their misfortunes, the Christians continued to show the most heroic bravery and resignation. They endured hunger, thirst, and fatigue without a complaint, and neither deserts, rivers, precipices, the heat of the climate, nor any other obstacle, could stop them in their incursions. In every kind of peril they sought all opportunities of proving their strength and skill, or of signalizing their valor. Sometimes in the forests or mountains they encountered savage animals. A French knight, named Geiger, rendered himself celebrated in the army by overcoming a lion. Another knight, Geoffrey de la Tour, gained great renown by an action which doubtless will appear incredible. He one day saw in a forest a lion which a serpent held within its monstrous folds, and which made the air resound with his roaring. Geoffrey flew to the assistance of the animal, which appeared to implore his pity, and with one blow of his sword killed the serpent, which was intent upon its prey. If we may believe an old chronicle, the lion thus delivered attached himself to his liberator, as to a master. He accompanied him during the war, and when, after the taking of Jerusalem, the Crusaders embarked to return into Europe, he was drowned in the sea whilst following the vessel in which Geoffrey was. 135. Several Crusaders, whilst waiting for the signal of departure for Jerusalem, went to visit their brethren who had established themselves in the conquered cities. Many of them repaired to Baldwin, and joined with him in contending against the Saracens of Mesopotamia. A knight, named Falk, who went with several of his companions to seek adventures on the banks of the Euphrates, was surprised and massacred by the Turks. His wife, whom he had taken with him, was brought before the Emir of Hazard or Hizas. Being of rare beauty, one of the principal officers of the Emir fell in love with her, 136, and asked her of his master in marriage, who yielded her to him, and permitted him to espouse her. This officer, deeply in love with the Christian woman, avoided all occasions of fighting against the Crusaders, and yet, zealous in the service of his master the Emir, made incursions into the territories of the Sultan of Aleppo. Ridwan, wishing to avenge himself, marched with an army of 40,000 men to attack the city of Hizas. Then the officer who had married the widow of Falk advised the Emir to implore the assistance of the Christians. The Emir proposed an alliance to Godfrey de Bouillon. Godfrey at first hesitated, But the Mussulman returned to the charge, and to disperse all the suspicions of the Christian princes, sent them his son, Muhammad, as an hostage. The treaty was then signed, and 2 pigeons, says a Latin historian, charged with a letter, brought the news to the emir, at the same time announcing to him the early arrival of the Christians. 137, the army of the Sultan of Aleppo was beaten in several encounters by Godfrey, and forced to abandon the territory of Hizas that it had begun to pillage. A short time after this expedition, the son of the emir died at Antioch of the epidemic so fatal to the pilgrims of the West. Godfrey, according to the custom of the Mussulmans, had the body of the young prince enveloped in rich, purple stuff, and sent it to his father. The deputies who accompanied this funeral convoy were ordered to express to the emir the regrets of Godfrey, and to tell him that their leader had been as much afflicted by the death of the young Prince Mohammed as he could have been by that of his brother Baldwin. The emir of Hizas wept for the death of his son, and never ceased to be the faithful ally of the Christians. The leaders of the Crusades still thought no more about setting forward on the march to Jerusalem, and the autumn advanced without their being engaged in any expedition of importance. In the midst of the idleness of the camps, a celestial phenomenon offered itself to the eyes of the Crusaders, and made a lively impression upon the minds of the multitude. The soldiers who guarded the ramparts
this
of
is too
Antioch saw,
laggy.
during the night, a luminous mass, which
love
appeared to
this
be fixed
image,
in
what
an
my friend
elevated
did to
point
me
of the
in Roblox.
heavens.
It's funny
It
as
seemed
hell.
as if all the stars, according to the expression opound Albert Dykes,
You can
were
look at
united
it.
in a space
It's
scarcely
covered.
more extensive than a garden of 3 acres.
It's so good.
These stars, says the same historian, shed the most brilliant light, 138, and shone like coals in a furnace. They appeared for a long time
It's just so
as
goofy.
if suspended over the city of Antioch. But the circle which seemed to contain them, being broken, they dispersed in the air. At the sight of the prodigy, the guards and sentinels uttered loud cries and ran to awaken the citizens of Antioch. All the pilgrims issued from their houses and found in this phenomenon a manifest sign of the will of heaven. Some believed they saw in the united stars an image of the Saracens, who were assembled at Jerusalem and who would be dispersed at the approach of the Christians. Others, equally full of hope, saw in them the Christian warriors uniting their victorious forces and then spreading themselves over the earth. Conquer the cities ravished from the Empire of Christ. But many of the pilgrims did not abandon themselves to these consolatory illusions. In a city where the people had much to suffer, and had dwelt during many months amidst death and its funeral rites, the future naturally presented itself under the most sad and disheartening colors. All who suffered and had lost the hope of ever seeing Jerusalem saw nothing
So
in the
be it.
phenomenon presented to their eyes, but an alarming symbol of the multitude of pilgrims, which was every
Just
day
so
diminishing,
random.
and which promised soon to be entirely dispersed, like the luminous clouds which they had seen in the heavens. Things, however, says Albert Dykes, turned out much better than was expected. For, a short time afterwards, the princes, on their return to Antioch, took the field, and brought under their dominion several cities of Upper Syria. The most important of their expeditions was a siege and capture of Mara, situated between Hamath and Aleppo. Raymond was the first to sit himself down before the city, where he was soon joined by the Duke of Normandy and the Count of Flanders and their troops. The Christians met with the most obstinate resistance and were besieged during several days. The infidels poured arrows and stones upon them in clouds, together with floods of an inflammable matter, which several historians pretend to have been the Great Fire. William of Tyre says that they hurled from the summits of the towers upon the assailants quicklime and hods filled with bees. 139. Want of provisions soon began to be felt, and the Crusaders at length experienced such distress that many among them subsisted upon the dead bodies of their enemies. 140. History ought, however, to relate with hesitation the extremes to which famine is said to have carried them, and to throw great doubt upon the account of the public sale of human flesh in the camp of the Christians. 141. The Crusaders endured all their misfortunes with patience, but they could not support the outrages committed by the inhabitants of Mora upon the religion of Jesus Christ. The infidels raised crosses upon the ramparts, covered them with ordure, and heaped all sorts of insults upon them. This sight so irritated the Christians that they resolved to redouble their efforts to get possession of the city. They constructed machines which shook the walls, whilst the soldiers mounted to the assault. And they succeeded, after a lengthened resistance, in making
A little bit. Still a little.
themselves masters of the towers and the ramparts. As they were overtaken by night in the midst of their victory, they did not venture to penetrate into the place. And when, with the break of day, they spread themselves through the streets, not a sound was to be heard. Every part of the city was deserted. The army pillaged the uninhabited houses, but soon discovered, to their great surprise, that the whole population of Mara had taken refuge in subterranean places. A large quantity of straw, set on fire at the mouths of the caverns, in which the infidels were concealed, soon forced them to issue from the retreats, and such was the animosity of the conquerors, that the bewildered and trembling multitude implored their pity in vain. All the inhabitants of Mora were either put to the sword or led into slavery. The city was completely razed to the ground, which so terrified the neighboring cities, says an historian, that of their own free will, and without force, they surrendered to the Crusaders. This conquest became the subject of fresh discord. Bohemond, who had come to the siege, was desirous of keeping a portion of the city, whilst Raymond pretended to reign over Mora as its sovereign. The debate for war. The camp of the Christians was filled with confusion and factions, and the Crusaders were very near shedding their own blood to ascertain who should be master of a city which they had just entirely deprived of inhabitants and given up to pillage. But God, who was the leader of this great enterprise, says Le Permainbourg, repaired by the zeal of the weak and the lowly that which the passions of the great and the wise of this world had destroyed. The soldiers became indignant at the thoughts of shedding for miserable quarrels the blood which they had sworn to dedicate to a sacred cause. Whilst they were most welcoming complaints and murmurs, the report reached them that Jerusalem had fallen into the hands of the Egyptians. They had taken advantage of the defeat of the Turks, and of the unfortunate delay of the Christian army in their invasion of Palestine. This news redoubled the discontent of the Crusaders, and they loudly accused Raymond and their other leaders of having betrayed the cause of God. They announced their intention of choosing fresh leaders, who should have no other ambition but that of accomplishing their vows,
guys are
and
weird
would conduct the Christian army to the Holy Land. The Count of St. Gilles and the Prince of Antioch, the latter of whom was, perhaps, no stranger to the general movement, went through the ranks and addressed the soldiers, the one upon the necessity of obedience, the other upon the glory which awaited them at Jerusalem. The tumult soon became more violent. The clergyman is threatened with the anger of heaven, whilst his soldiers threaten to abandon his standard. The provincials themselves at length refused to obey the inflexible Count of Toulouse, and the army set seriously to work to demolish the ramparts of Morat, the possession of which was the object of contention. Whilst this was going on, Tancred had, by either force or address, got possession of the citadel of Antioch, and planted the standard of Bohemond in place of that of the Count of Saint-Gilles Raymond, thus, left alone, and without any hopes of realizing his pretensions, was obliged to yield to the wishes of the army, and appear to listen to the voice of God. After having set fire to the city of Morat, he marched out of it by the light of the flames, barefooted, and shedding tears of repentance. Followed by the clergy, who sang the psalms of penitence, he agreed his ambition and renewed the oath he had so often made, and so often forgotten, of delivering the tomb of Jesus Christ. Book 4. AD 1099 to 1103. More than 6 months had passed away since the taking of Antioch, and several of the leaders of the Crusades still thought nothing of commencing the march to Jerusalem. As soon as Raymond gave the signal for departure, his soldiers, and the knights who accompanied him, broke into loud demonstrations of joy and revived enthusiasm. The Count of Toulouse was followed by Tancred and the Duke of Normandy, who were impatient to accomplish their vow and conquer Palestine. Conducted by these 3 leaders, a great part of the Christian army traversed the territories of Caesarea in Syria, Anna, and Edessa. From all parts, both Christians and Mussulmans came eagerly to meet them, the former to beg their assistance, the latter to implore their clemency. Many emirs came to conjure Raymond to plant his standard on their cities' walls, to protect them from pillage, and render them safe from the enterprises of the other crusaders. The pilgrims everywhere on their passage received provisions and rich tributes without the trouble and risk of fighting for them. In the course of their triumphant march, the sweetest food of their labors and the terror that their arms inspired was the return of a vast number of Christian prisoners, whose death they had mourned, who were sent to them from the neighboring cities by the Mussulman chiefs. They drew near to the seacoast, and advanced, almost without obstacle, as far as the vicinity of Argos. The city was situated at the foot of Libanus, 2 leagues from the sea, in a territory covered with olive trees and rich with corn. The Count of Toulouse, either from a desire to conquer so rich a country, or from being provoked by the insults and threats of the infidels, resolved to besiege Argos. 142, in order to inflame the courage of his soldiers and associate them with him in his project, he promised them as a reward for their labors, the pillage of the city and the deliverance of 200 Christian prisoners confined in the citadel. In the meantime, Godfrey, Eustace, and Robert, Count of Flanders, had not yet set out from Antioch. They did not begin their march before the early days of spring. Bohemond accompanied them as far as Laodicea, 143, and then returned to his capital, after having promised his companions to rejoin them before Jerusalem. At Laodicea, the Crusaders liberated the Flemish pirates who had taken the cross at Tarsus, and who, for more than a year, had been detained prisoners by the Greeks, the masters of that city. At the same place, the Christian army received the reinforcement of new crusaders from the port of Holland and Flanders and the British Isles. Among these new defenders of the cross was Edgar Atheling, who, after the death of Harold, had disputed the crown of England with William the Conqueror. he came to endeavor to forget the misfortunes of his country under the banners of the Holy War, and at the same time to seek a refuge from the tyranny of the conqueror. The English and the new crusaders from other countries were received with a great joy into the ranks of the Christian army, which, however, pursued its march towards Palestine very slowly. It grieved the greater part of the leaders to be obliged to traverse such rich provinces without establishing their domination in them. There was not a city in the route upon the walls of which one of them had not a strong sacred inclination to plant his standard. These pretensions gave birth to rivalries which weakened the army and prevented it from making useful conquests. Raymond still obstinately prosecuted the siege of Arcas, which opposed to him the firmest resistance. Godfrey went to lay siege to Gibel or Giblet, 144, a maritime city situated some leagues from Laodicea. The leaders of the army never consented to unite their efforts against the Saracens, but sold to the emirs, by turns,
I gotta
their
stop this
inaction
and
and their
turn my,
neutrality. The only expedition in which success crowned their bravery was the attack of Tortosa.
Turn my graphics
145.
down.
Raymond, Viscount de Turin, the Viscount de
I mean, I'm
Castellane,
suspicious that
the
that's what's
Seigneur
causing
d'Albret,
my life.
and some others of the principal leaders of the
Yeah, usually
Gascons
that's
and
the issue.
Provencals, with 100 horse and 200 foot, presented themselves before the city. The inhabitants closed their gates, manned their ramparts, and
Playing main cat. I call it
forced the
main cat.
Christians to retreat. The leader of this expedition, Raymond de
One
Turin,
of my
who
favorite
had
types of
not a
bats.
sufficient number of troops to undertake a siege or force a city to surrender, had recourse to a stratagem, which succeeded. At night, he caused to be lighted in a neighboring wood such a number of fires that the inhabitants of Tortosa were persuaded that the whole Christian army was come to attack them, and before the break of day they all fled to the mountains, taking with them their most valuable effects. On the morrow the Christians approached this city, the ramparts of which they found deserted, and entered it without resistance. After having pillaged the houses and given up to the flames a city they could not keep, they returned to the camp loaded with booty. The Mussulmans shut up in Arcas still held up against the Christians. Although the army was encamped in a fertile country, they soon began to experience the want of provisions. The poorest of the pilgrims were reduced, as at Antioch, to feed upon roots, and dispute with animals, the leaves of the trees and the grass of the fields. The numerous clergy which followed the army sunk into the deepest distress. Such as could fight went to ravage the surrounding country, and lived on pillage. But those whom age, sex, or infirmities would not permit to carry arms, had no hope but in the charity of the Christian soldiers. The army freely assisted them, and gave up to them the 10th part of the booty obtained from the infidels. A great number of the crusaders yielded to the fatigues of the siege, and perished with misery and disease, whilst many fell by the hands of the enemy, who defended themselves with obstinate valour. Among those whose loss was most regretted, history has preserved the name of Pons de Balassu. He was highly esteemed in the army for his intelligence, and, up to his death, had written the history of the crusade
Find a
in
right
conjunction
one.
with
Let's see if I can find a good wall.
Raymond Giles.
What's I'm gonna do?
The Crusaders also gave their tears to the memory of Anselm de Raymond, Count de Bouchain, whose piety and courage are much praised in the chronicles chronicles of the times. Contemporary authors relate his death as attended with such wonderful circumstances as deserve to be preserved, because they afford a strong idea of the spirit which animated the Crusaders. One day we follow the relation of Raymond Giles. Anselm saw enter into his tent young Angelram, son of the Countess St. Paul, who had been killed at the siege of Morat. 146. How is it, said he, that I see you still living whom I saw dead on the field of battle? No, replied Angelram, that they who fight for
See if I can find it right.
Jesus Christ do not die. But whence comes that strange splendor with which I see you surrounded? Then Angelram pointed out to him in the heavens a palace of crystal and diamonds. It is thence, he added, that I derive the beauty which surprises you. That is my boat, and there is a much more beautiful one being prepared for you, which you will soon inhabit. Farewell. We shall meet again tomorrow. At these words, adds the historian, Angelram returned to heaven. Anselm, struck with this apparition, the next morning sent for several ecclesiastics, and received the sacraments. And, although in full health, took leave of his friends, telling them he was about to quit the world in which they had known him. A few hours afterwards, the enemy having made a sortie, Anselm flew, sword in hand, to meet them, and was struck on the forehead by a stone, which, say the historians, sent him to the beautiful palace in heaven that was prepared for him. This marvelous recital, which was credited by the Crusaders, is not the only one of the kind that history has collected. It is useless.
My favorite one.
Remind our readers that extreme misery always rendered the Crusaders more superstitious and credulous. Although the siege of Arcus had no religious aim, and even turned the pilgrims aside from the principal object of the holy war, it was not thence less abundant, according to Raymond Giles, in miracles and prodigies of all sorts. The belief of the people was frequently supported by the most enlightened of the leaders, who found it necessary to warm the imaginations of the soldiers to preserve their authority. Every day fresh parties were formed in the Christian army, and the most powerful were always those who circulated a belief in the greatest number of miracles. It was during the siege of Arcus that doubts arose among the pilgrims about the discovery of lands which had had such an effect upon the courage of the Crusaders at the Battle of Antioch, and the camp of the besiegers became all at once divided into two great factions, strongly opposed to each other. Arnold de Rose, according to William of Tyre, a man of dissolute manners, but well versed in history and letters, was the first who dared openly to deny the truth of the prodigy. This ecclesiastic, who was chaplain to the Duke of Normandy, drew into his party all the Normans and the Crusaders from the north of France, whilst those of the south ranged themselves on the side of Barthélemy, who was attached to the Countess Saint-Gilles. The priest of Marseille, a simple man, who himself believed that which he wished others to believe, had a new revelation, and related in the camp that he had seen Jesus Christ attached to the cross, cursing the incredulous, and devoting to the death and punishment of Judas the impious skeptics, who
This
dared
guy's
to
got
search into the
schizophrenia.
mysterious ways of God. This apparition, and the menaces of Christ, highly excited
Seen
the imaginations
apparitions
of the
next.
Provencals, who had no less faith, according to Raymond Giles, in the tales of Barthélemy, than in the evidence of the saints and apostles. But Arnold was astonished that God should only reveal himself to a simple priest, whilst so many virtuous prelates were in the army. And, without denying the intervention of the divine power, he was not willing to
It
admit
looks
any other
awful.
prodigies than those performed by the valor and heroism of the Christian soldiers. As the produce of the offerings made to the depositaries of the Holy Lands were distributed to the poor, the latter, who were in vast numbers in the army, were not sparing in murmurs against the chaplain of the Duke of Normandy, and they attributed to his incredulity, and that of his partisans, all the evils that the Crusaders had suffered during the siege of Arcus. Arnold and his party which increased every day. On the contrary, attributed the misfortunes of the Christians to their divisions and to the turbulent spirit of a set of visionaries. Amongst these debates, the Crusaders of the northern provinces reproached those of the south with want of bravery in fight, with being less anxious for glory than pillage, and with passing their time in ornamenting their horses and mules. 147. The latter, on their side, did not cease to reproach the partisans of Arnold with their want of faith and their sacrilegious railleries, and, without ceasing, opposed new visions to the reasonings of the incredulous. One had seen Saint Mark, the evangelist, another the Holy Virgin, and both had attested the veracity of the priest of Marseille. Bishop Ademar had appeared to a third, informing him that he had been kept several days in hell for having entertained some doubts of the truth of the Holy Lands. These recitals only served still more to inflame the minds of the army, and violence often came to the support of trickery and credulity. At length Barthélemy, seduced by the importance of the part he was made to play, and perhaps, also, by the miraculous tales of his partisans, which might strengthen his own illusions, resolved to terminate all debates by submitting to the ordeal by fire. This resolution restored calm to the Christian army, and all the pilgrims were convoked to be witnesses of the judgment of God. On the day fixed, it was Good Friday. A funeral pile, made of branches of olive, was erected in the middle of a vast plain. Most of the Crusaders were assembled, and everything was prepared for the terrible ordeal. The flames had already mounted to a height of 20 cubits, when Barthélemy was seen advancing, accompanied by the priests, who walked in silence, barefooted, and clothed in their sacerdotal habits. Covered by a simple tunic, the priest of Marseille bore the Holy Lance, surrounded with floating streamers. When he arrived within a few paces of the pile, one of the principal of the clergy pronounced in a loud voice the following words: "If this man had seen Jesus Christ face to face, and if the Apostle Andrew did reveal the divine lance to him, may he pass safe and sound through the flames. But if, on the contrary, he is guilty of falsehood, may he be burned, together with the lance which he bears in his hands." At these words all the spectators bowed, and answered as, with one voice, "Be the will of God accomplished." Barthélemy threw himself on his knees, took heaven to witness the truth of all that he had said, and, after recommending himself to the prayers of the bishops and priests, rushed through the funeral pile at a part where an opening of 2 feet wide had been made for his passage. The numerous spectators lost sight of him for a moment, and many pilgrims, says Raymond Giles, were beginning to lament him when they saw him appear on the side opposite to that by which he had entered. He was immediately surrounded and pressed upon by an innumerable crowd, who cried out "Miracle!" and were eager to touch his vestments. But Barthélemy was covered with mortal wounds. He was carried in a dying state to the tent of the Count of Toulouse, where he expired a few days after, still protesting his innocence and veracity. He was buried beneath the spot where the funeral pile had been erected. Raymond of Saint Gilles and the Provencals persisted in regarding him as an apostle and a martyr. The greater number of the pilgrims allowed themselves to be satisfied with the judgment of God. 148, and the miraculous lance from that time ceased to work miracles. 149. In vain the Crusaders from the southern provinces endeavored to substitute for it the ring and cross of Ademar. They attracted neither the devotion nor the offerings of the pilgrims. Whilst the Crusaders were detained before the fortress of Arcas, they received an embassy from Alexius. The Greek emperor wished to impose upon the Latins by promising to follow them into Palestine with an army, if they would allow him time to make the necessary preparations. Alexius in his letters complained of the non-performance of the treaties by which he was to be made master of the cities of Syria and Asia Minor that had fallen into the hands of the Christians. But he complained without bitterness, and showed so much circumspection in his reproaches as proof that he likewise had some wrongs to repair. This embassy was but ill received in the Christian army. The leaders accused the Greeks of the death of the Count of Hanau, and reproached the emperor with his shameful flight during the siege of Antioch. They despised his complaints, and gave no faith to his so often broken promises. the Latins hated Alexius ever since the siege of Nice. Hatred guided them on this occasion better than the most clear-sighted policy could have done. For in the end, if we are to believe their historians, they learned that the Emperor of Constantinople maintained a secret understanding with the Caliph of Egypt, and that his design was to retard the march and the progress of the Christian army. The Caliph of Cairo, who was governed by the same policy as Alexius, kept up relations with the Crusaders which circumstances rendered more or less sincere, and which were subordinate to the fear which their arms inspired. Although he negotiated at the same time with the Christians and the Turks, he hated the former because they were the enemies of the Prophet, and the latter because they had deprived him of Syria. His object was but to profit by the war, so as to regain his possessions and extend the limits of his empire. For several months he had been master of Jerusalem, and as he trembled for his new conquest, he sent ambassadors to the Christian army. This embassy arrived in the camp a short time after the departure of the deputies of Alexius. It was accompanied by the deputies whom the Christians had sent into Egypt during the siege of Antioch. On their arrival at Cairo they had, at first, been well received by the Caliph. But as soon as he learned that the Christian army was in a desperate situation, they were thrown into dungeons, and only owed their liberation to the triumphant march of the Christian army, which filled the East with the fame of its victories. Their unexpected return gave the greatest delight to their brothers and companions. They listened with emotion to the account of their captivity, and loud cries of indignation arose throughout the army against the Caliph of Cairo. The Egyptian ambassadors did all in their power to justify their master, and appease the anger of the Christians. They had brought with them magnificent presents, destined by the Caliph for the principal leaders of the army. They were to present to Godfrey a bullion 40,000 pieces of gold, 30 metals, and several vases of gold and silver. To Balaam they were to offer 60,000 pieces of gold, 50 purple mantles, several precious vases, rich carpets, and an Arabian horse whose harness was covered with plates of gold. Each leader was to receive a present proportioned to his military reputation, and to the idea that was entertained of his importance in the Christian army. When the ambassadors had distributed the presents of the Caliph, according to his instructions, they demanded permission to speak in the council of the leaders. They announced that their master had delivered Jerusalem from the domination of the Turks, and that he anxiously desired to maintain peace with the Christians. After having declared the benevolent and friendly dispositions of the Caliph, and after having repeated that it was his intention to protect pilgrimages and the exercise of the Christian religion, they finished by declaring that the gates of Jerusalem should only be open to unarmed Christians. Upon hearing this proposition, which they had already rejected amidst the miseries of the siege of Antioch, the leaders of the Christian army could not restrain their indignation. As their only answer, they came to the resolution to hasten their march towards the Holy Land, and threatened the ambassadors of Egypt to carry their arms even to the banks of the Nile. The Crusaders were drawing together their troops, which had so long been dispersed, to march together towards Jerusalem, when they were attacked by the Emir of Tripoli. A prompt and bloody defeat was the reward of the temerity of the Mussulman prince. After having lost a great number of his soldiers, he was obliged to purchase peace and the safety of his capital by the payment of a considerable tribute to the Crusaders. He furnished them with provisions in abundance, sent back 300 Christian prisoners to the camp, and, to leave no pretext for future hostilities, he engaged to surrender the places he possessed when their standards should float over the walls of Jerusalem. The Crusaders, satisfied with this promise extracted from fear, had no more enemies to combat, and now only thought of that one conquest which was to assure them all others. Raymond alone did not partake of the new ardor of a Christian army. He was fixed in his determination to remain before Arcas, and only gave up the siege when his soldiers had a second time threatened to abandon his colors. The Crusaders commenced their march towards Palestine at the end of the month of May. 150. The inhabitants of Phoenicia had finished their harvest. The Christians found provisions everywhere, and admired, on their passage, the rich productions of Asia, which they already looked upon as a reward of their labors. On their left rose the mountains of Libanus, so often celebrated by the prophets. Between the mountains and the sea, the fields they traversed were covered with olive trees, which grew to the height of elms and oaks. In the plains and on the hills were oranges, pomegranates, and many other sorts of trees unknown in the West. Among these new productions one plant, the juice of which was sweeter than honey, above all attracted the attention of the pilgrims. This plant was the sugar cane. It was cultivated in several of the provinces of Syria, and particularly in the territory of Tripoli, where they had found means of extracting from it the substance which the inhabitants called Zucra 151. According to Albert Dykes, this plant had afforded great assistance to the Christians when assailed by famine at the sieges of Mara and Argos. This plant, now become of such importance in commerce, had been till this time unknown in the West. The pilgrims made it known in Europe, and towards the end of the Crusades it was transported into Italy and Sicily, whilst the Saracens introduced it into the kingdom of Granada, whence the Spaniards afterwards conveyed it to Madeira and the American colonies. 152. When the pilgrims were all united to continue their march to Palestine, they must doubtless have been struck with terror as they contemplated the losses they had experienced. More than 200,000 crusaders had been cut off by battles, famine, misery, and disease. A great number of them, unable to support the fatigues of the holy pilgrimage, and losing all hope of seeing Palestine, had returned to the West. Many had taken up their abode in Antioch, Edessa, and other cities from which they had driven the inhabitants, and which they were obliged to defend against the infidels. With all these deductions, the army which was to achieve the conquest of the Holy Land scarcely numbered 50,000 fighting men under the banners. The leaders, however, did not hesitate to pursue their enterprise. They, who did remain in the ranks, had borne every trial. They did not drag in their train a useless, embarrassing multitude. And it was much more easy to supply them with provisions and establish order and discipline amongst them. Strengthened in some sort by their losses, they were perhaps more formidable than they were at the siege of Nice. The remembrance of their exploits increased their confidence and courage, and the terror which their arms inspired might well make the Saracens believe that their army was still innumerable. Most of the princes whom the war had ruined were in the pay of the Count of Toulouse. This species of degradation was doubtless painful to their pride. But as they approached the holy city, it might be said that they lost some of their indomitable arrogance, and that they forgot both their pretensions and their quarrels. The most perfect union now prevailed among the Crusaders. In their impatience to see Jerusalem, neither mountains, defiles, rivers, nor any other impediments at all damped their ardor. The soldiers would not even consent to take repose, and often, contrary to the wishes of their leaders, marched during the night. The Christian army followed the coasts of the sea, where they might be provisioned by the Pisan, Genoese, and Flemish fleets. A crowd of Christians and pious solitaries who inhabited the neighboring mountains hastened to meet their brethren of the West, brought them fresh provisions, and guided them on their way. After a painful march over rocks and along the declivities of precipices, they descended into the plain of Berytus, and traversed the territory of Sidon and Tyre. Whilst they remained 3 days on the banks of the river Eleutera, they were assailed by serpents called Tarenta, whose bite produced death, attended by violent pain and unquenchable thirst. The sight of these reptiles, which they attempted to frighten away by striking stones one against another, or by the clashing of their bucklers, filled the pilgrims with fear and surprise. But that which must have much more astonished them was the strange remedy for their bite which the inhabitants pointed out to them, and which without doubt must have seemed to them far more subject of scandal than a means of cure. 153. The Christians, having still continued to march along the coast, arrived before the walls of Aachen, the ancient Ptolemy, at the present-day St. Jean d'Acre. The emir who commanded in the city for the Caliph of Egypt sent them provisions, and promised to surrender as soon as they should become masters of Jerusalem. The Crusaders, who who had no idea of attacking Ptolemy, received with joy the submission and promises of the Egyptian emir. But chance soon made them aware that he had no other intention but that of getting them out of his territories and raising up enemies against them in the countries they were about to pass through. The Christian army, after having quitted the country of Ptolemy, had advanced between the sea and Mount Carmel, and were encamped near the port of Caesarea, when a dove, which had escaped from the talons of a bird of prey, fell lifeless among the soldiers. The Bishop of Apt, who chanced to pick up this bird, found under its wing a letter written by the Emir of Ptolemy to the Emir of Caesarea. "The cursed race of the Christians," wrote the Emir, "have just passed through my territories, and will soon cross yours. Let the chiefs of all the Mussulman cities be warned of their march, and let them take measures to crush our enemies." This letter was read in the council of the princes, and before all the army. The Crusaders, according to the account of Raymond Giles, an eyewitness, broke out into loud expressions of surprise and joy, no longer doubting that God protected their enterprise, since he sent the birds of heaven to reveal to them the secrets of the infidels. Filled with new enthusiasm, they continued their route, drawing away from the sea, and leaving Antipatride and Jaffa on the right. They saluted in the east the heights of Ephraim, and took possession of Lydda, the ancient Diospolis, celebrated by the martyrdom of St. George, and of Ramla, famous for the birth and tomb of Samuel. When arrived at this last named city, the Christians had only a march of 16 miles to be before Jerusalem. The leaders held a council, in which some of them proposed to go and attack the
Wow. Okay. I am getting. You can Traintastic. I'm talking to my stream right now. You may be the only one on. I don't know if you're on my stream or not, but somebody's watching. And this is supposed to be the day that I start playing Valorant. You know, it's like sort of like a crash and burn thing. I started Valorant up. I did some practicing. I noticed I'm overloading the graphics on OBS persistently. Now, thanks to Traintastic, yeah, you know, he was like, "Is there any way I can boost my game?" I was like, "Dude, I don't know. Man. Why don't you Google it?" And so he Googled it, and he came up with this thing, Razer. Right, and what I've done here is,
did it help?
Well, that's what I'm checking out. It's like right now, you know, you install Razer, and then you go in there to the boost panel or whatever like that, and then it gives you a list of some kind of 21 things or whatever it's going to do, and you hit the boost. Man, it came back and it said it released 2.25 or 2.15 gigs of memory. so that's great. And I don't, you know, I'm not getting the graphics overload message right now. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop the stream and I'm going to start it back again. But I'm going to stop the stream in order to check out my OBS. Well, actually, you know, no, I'm not. The first, okay. Stupid. All right. I ran this Razer thing. It said it fixed a bunch of stuff. So logically, instead of trying to turn down, you know, I ought to see if Razer like cleared up the problem, right? Before I go to the drastic measure of turning down